friends. Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 110. This is Friday, March 22nd, 2024, and I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's kind of cloudy and coolish today. It's spring weather. Spring is, after all, a rainy season, often. And it's not actually cool in terms of temperature, but it feels cool. So I have long sleeves and a vest. But the weather report is not why you came. Flosstube has to do with cross-stitch, and Variety Show means something else, and we'll discover what that is, and I hope I can discover what it is. I'm sure I can. I'll start with cross-stitch, of course, Jane Boyer, 1834. This is as yet unpublished, but it will be available this fall. Sampler reproduction. My friend Leslie is doing the reproduction, and I'm doing the stitching of the model. And so I have a light on over there, and it's kind of weird, isn't it? Move it. I'm not sure that's better, but possibly. So you can see I've come down all the way. I think that I had not come all the way to the bottom last time, and I certainly had not done as much of that inner over one border as I now have. I decided to give one length of thread to each line of the verse at the very beginning in order to put that intermediate inner border to be able to make sure it was right, not just with the side of the cartouche, but also with the verse. And of course, I'm, again, so happy about that verse. I like this little sampler verse, which it's a good thing because it's the same sampler verse as in Jane Thompson, which I'm also doing. Maybe Jane's, the governesses who were in charge of children whose name was Jane, had them do that verse. I don't know. But mathematically, it is possible for me to finish this before the end of April, but my husband and I are going to be gone for a stretch of time, so not sure. Last weekend was the third weekend of the month, and as has been my habit for probably a year now, I've been stitching Christmas-themed stitching the third weekend of every month with the hashtag #NativitySal. And I think I actually did post something over on Instagram. So this is how far I got. I finished this building, and I started the hillside, and that's actually a lot of stitches. I did the ground level underneath that building as well. And I did it, I totally forgot about it on Friday last week, because Friday is normally a weekend day when it comes to this. Totally forgot. And so I worked on it on Saturday. Sunday turned out to be a busy day somehow. Oh, I know why. Cindy and I went to an estate sale for fabric. We'll tell you more about that in our next Galloping Horse video, which I think will be this coming week. Anyway, but then I decided that the weekend could extend into Monday, so that represents mostly Saturday and Monday's work. I really like this, and one of the reasons I like it is because it's monochrome. And I also like it because this fabric is beautiful. This is 32 count Lugana, dyed by Fox and Rabbit. It was dyed for a retreat that they gave on Mirabilia, a certain Mirabilia chart. And they had leftover fabric, so they, ooh, I'm so sorry, I just bumped the camera. They had leftover fabric that they offered to their Patreon members. So I got a couple pieces. Lost. This is in the Words of Wisdom box. And again, I'm going to read it aloud, even though I've read it before and you've probably heard it before. Lost, somewhere between sunrise and sunset, 2 golden hours, each set with 60 diamond minutes. No reward is offered, for they are lost forever. 1897. I could have finished this because I was enjoying it, but I held off. I mean, I focused on Jane Boyer instead of finishing this. So this border down here, I carried down. I think I carried this side border down a little bit. And I finished, I can't remember how much of the third line of the verse I had, but I finished that line and started the next line. It's close. Maybe I'll finish it soon. This is 46 count Latte. And I'm using 103, a light blue, a medium blue thread. It's not exactly what's called for, but it was in my stash. Jane Thompson by the Scarlet House. This was a homespun needlework Facebook group exclusive, I think last year. 1838 was when this was stitched. Again, this is the Jesus Permit Thy Gracious Name to Stand verse, the same as on Jane Boyer. And I showed this last week, and I did work on it a couple of days this week. I did some more of the flowers across the border on the top, and I finished, I think I had not finished out that upper cartouche area over here, the inner borders, I can't remember. And I was hoping to do a few of the flowers on this border, but I ran out of time. And my stitching time has been hindered this week because of watching basketball, because even if I say to myself, well, this isn't the Tar Heels, so I don't have to watch every moment of it, I get absorbed in watching it, and I find that I haven't taken a stitch in 10 minutes. So it does have an effect, even if it isn't the Tar Heels, which let's just slide into a random collection of topics for variety show, because that's all the cross stitch I have to show. I'll just say that my plan for the coming week, my plan for stitching will be to work some more on Jane Boyer, of course, to keep making very good progress on that, which I feel very good about how that's going. And I'll probably return to Hannah Campbell. I seem to be happily alternating Hannah Campbell and Jane Thompson as my other largish sampler. And you have not seen the sampler 193 in quite a while. You haven't seen either of my full coverage pieces in quite a while. Maybe I'll pull one of those out. But I'll say that the full coverage especially, it requires, at least to me, it seems to require multiple days in a row of significant attention in order for me to feel that I'm making progress. And it's hard to get started on that. It just feels a little bit insurmountable to find that kind of focus. And so therefore, I'm very happily giving that sort of focus to Jane Boyer instead. So after Jane Boyer is done, I imagine that Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather especially will come to the fore. I hope so. I hope my mind will be ready to grasp it. Okay, basketball. The Tar Heels did not win the ACC championship. We lost amazingly to NC State, and I say amazingly because they had to play in the Tuesday game, the Wednesday game, the Thursday game, the Friday game before they faced us. And I don't think in the ACC tournament a team has ever won 5 games in a row. Then last night in the NCAA tournament, they beat their opponent. They were an 11 seed, I think, and they beat their 4 seed, or they were a 10 seed and beat their 5 seed. I don't remember what the numbers were. I may have the numbers wrong. I think it has to be even numbers matched. No, I don't know. They won their first round, so they will play again. They'll play again tomorrow. That's true, yes. And we are not NC State fans, but we are fans of the ACC, so we hope ACC teams do well. And we're kind of marveling at NC State because they're traditionally, by tradition, by habit, they are not good. They're sort of flash in the pan good, but they seem to be pretty good this year. So that'll be interesting to see how far they get in the tournament. Speaking of tournaments and rounds, the last week was the Sudoku Grand Prix. I think I mentioned that, right? I think I must have mentioned it because that's all I think about is Sudoku. Well, that's clearly not true, but I do think about it a lot. And I did pretty well. I got 76 points, turning in 3 puzzles. I attempted a 4th one, made a mistake, and decided to ditch it and try a 5th one, which I didn't have time to finish. So I only turned in 3 puzzles, but I was correct on the 3 of them. And just out of curiosity, I compared my scores this year in the first 3 rounds to the first 3 rounds last year. And this year I have 270-ish points in 3 rounds. And last year in 3 rounds, I had about 170, roughly 170 points. And this year I completed 11 puzzles, and last year in 3 rounds I completed 8. So I definitely feel that I'm better, quicker at making the logical deductions necessary to solve. My son did pretty well also, and he undertook the hardest puzzle in this month's challenge and completed it. So I've started to work on it as well. I've so far spent about 50 minutes on it, which it's a 90-minute round, so that would have been pretty disastrous if I had started with that puzzle. But if I end up being able to finish it within 90 minutes, I will mathematically have done better, assuming, if I had, just comparing, if I had been exactly in the same state of mind, the same energy level, the same caffeinated level and whatever. So it is a little bit of an object lesson that perhaps I should try a harder puzzle earlier in the time frame in a future round. In fact, maybe I should try it first and then fill in the remaining time with the puzzles at the beginning of the booklet, which are the easier ones. I don't know what I should do. And it's hard to tell. As I say, caffeinated level, amount of sleep has something to do with it as well. So, don't know. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, exciting. And you all need to listen up on this. Last Saturday, I think it was, Nicola Parkman and Sue of Mini McBeans put out a video announcing that registration was open for the people who had attended Great British Sampler Weekend 2023, i.e. last fall, which Leslie and I went to in England. Registration was open for that group for Great British Sampler Weekend 2025 in England, which is being called Mrs. Parkman's School of Needlework Retreat or something. And so registration was open, and the hotel rooms were available to be reserved also. And so I jumped right on that. I texted Leslie, I texted Teresa, I texted Roxy, I texted Peggy. I haven't gotten in touch with the Carols, the 2 Carols who were at our table, or Sam, but I will try to do so today because it opens for the general public tomorrow on the 23rd. And I expect it will sell out because major retreats like this do. they do sell out. And I think already there were 50 or 60 people from the 2023 group had already signed up, according to the contents of the private Facebook group that's set up for it. So anyway, it's exciting to imagine going again. And Leslie and I will have to, I have some thoughts, which I'll share with you, Leslie, at some other point, about getting there earlier and not booking through our travel agent, things like that, which I'm sure you would agree with. Okay, so anyway, that is on the horizon. If you are interested, watch for the registration to be made open to the general public either tomorrow or Sunday. And there are a lot of improvements in how it's been managed. The biggest one is it's being managed in terms of the registration and payment through the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website. And what that means is that you can use your credit card to sign up. And what that means is you don't have to go to the bank and do a wire, which is what we had to do last time. So it's much easier this time. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Norfolk table as much as we can gather all together again in 2025. Okay. Finally, now this is sort of, so all of that was randomness. And I'm sure there'll be more randomness because that's how my mind is working these days. But I did want to talk about the book that our book club most recently read, which is called The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. We discussed it last night. It was our March book club selection. I wonder if any of you has read it. The second book is called something like Love in a Cold Climate or something, which apparently it's also very good. And it was this book was recommended to us by one of our members who'd read it before and really enjoyed it and read it multiple times and thought that it was really a funny book. And it was interesting to me because I listened to it. I didn't read it with my eyes. I read it with my ears. And I would not, at the time I was reading it, say it was very funny, really. But as we discussed it, I realized how funny it was, especially when Margaret and I sort of recollected our favorite bits. I realized that it's quite a, it's created largely of caricatures. The characters are extremes, most of them, not all of them. I think that Aunt Sadie is a pretty normal person, and the narrator, Fanny, seems to have a pretty level. She's not caricatured. Of course, she's the narrator, so how could she caricature herself, really? Although you do definitely get that in The Moonstone. That one character who is the religious fanatic person, she does not realize that she's caricaturing herself, but she's a first-person narrator of one section of it, and it's very funny from that standpoint. But anyway, this is a very interesting book. It is set, I think that it begins in the 1920s, maybe 28 or so, after World War I and before World War II, in an upper middle class family. You know, they have money, they don't labor for their money for the most part. I guess some of them do. They, go on hunts, and they have horses and grooms and servants and cooks and all that kind of thing. They live in a house that has a name. That's sort of a definition of being that type of person. Sort of the era of Downton Abbey. Although a little bit later, the era of the later section of Downton Abbey, as I understand it. I haven't watched the later section. But, and then it goes through World War II. And there's some parts of it that are very sad, and there's some parts that are just very funny. But the interesting thing that I thought as I was reading the book was that it has a lot of similarities in a way, to Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. And I wondered if it was actually a tip of the hat to Jane Austen. So the main character, that is the main narrator, Fanny, who is not the main character. The main character is her cousin Linda, who's pretty much her same age, very similar in age. Her name is Fanny, and in Mansfield Park, the main character is named Fanny. And Fanny in The Pursuit of Love is the cousin who was brought to live with the family of her aunt and uncle because her mother, so in Pursuit of Love, because her mother and father presumably couldn't care for her or weren't able to care for her very well. In Mansfield Park, Fanny was actually sent to live with her aunt and uncle by her parents because they had too many children. They couldn't provide for everybody. And I think Fanny showed the most promise of being able to benefit from the education that she would be able to receive there as opposed to being at home. And it's so many similarities from that standpoint down to her name. And there's an older sister who's married and stable, and you hardly ever hear anything about because she isn't interesting, and she's not part of Linda's story, the cousin that Fanny mostly tells a story about. So that I just thought that was interesting. Mansfield Park is one of the lesser known, but I think very good novels of Jane Austen. And if you have read Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, those are the two big ones that most people have read. And then probably the third most often read is Emma. Those three are fantastic novels. And Mansfield Park is right up there in terms of its quality of social commentary and clever writing and storyline and all of that. It's a little darker, a little more serious, especially a little more serious than maybe Emma. I don't know, is Emma the most lighthearted of them? Anyway, it's very much worth a read. So if you like reading Jane Austen and you haven't read Mansfield Park, I recommend it. So anyway, that we discussed Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford last night, and I might just have to make myself find myself the ability to read the other one called Love in a Cold Climate. And I just think that's a very funny title anyway, especially for a book that was written in the 1940s. It just seems kind of funny. But anyway, that was our book club last night. Seems to me there was something else I was going to talk about. And you know, I have over here, I create the notes, the description field for the video before I record, because it helps me remember what I wanted to talk about. But if I forget to put the thing in the description field, or if it's a variety show topic that's just a random topic, then I don't know. I sometimes can't remember what it was. And I'm not going to make you watch me witter on about what I can't remember, because I can't think of what I wanted to say. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that this week. I did do that last week a little bit. And some of you, I think, watched to the very end, and I do appreciate it. Yeah, so upcoming little housekeeping things. Next week, Cindy and I are going to record a galloping horse video, and I'm going to predict that it will go up on Thursday of next week, and there won't be a Friday Flosstube. That's just my guess. I think we have it on the calendar to record on Tuesday. And I have been up in the sewing room and I will have some things to show by then. Although Cindy has more things to show because she she doesn't cross stitch. Her main hobby is sewing of various sorts, embroidery on her embroidery machine, and quilt making and other kinds of sewing. And my hobbies are, my time is split between multiple hobbies. So, but that'll be next week for sure. There will be a galloping horse video recorded, and I imagine it will go up on Thursday. Probably no Flosstube. The following week will be March 29th. Yes, that's right. Friday the 29th. And I will do a Flosstube video that day for sure. The following week will be April 4th, 5th, something like that. I won't be, because we'll be traveling. Now, it doesn't mean there won't be any kind of video. There might be a brief video, but it won't be a Flosstube, I don't think. And then the following week, the 12th of April, might or might not be. If we get home on the 11th, then there might be a video the 12th. But we will have been gone for 9 days, 10 days at that point if we, so maybe there won't be. And it also depends on whether I'm able to do much cross-stitch while we're traveling. We'll be staying in hotels. I'll be taking my little portable light with me. And there's certain projects I'm taking because I think I can work on them in those circumstances. Like A-ropes and I think Winter Rose Manor I can work on probably with that kind of light. So maybe those two. I don't know about Jane Boyer because it's 40 count. And the over one, I'm pretty sure I can't do using that magnifier. So probably, that'll probably be a hiatus in working on Jane Boyer very much. But that's all about that. That's the future plan. So next week, look for Galloping Horse. And I think you'll enjoy it. Cindy and I have a great time together. And we always have a great time together. And usually that comes across in the videos, I think. And she's just a really talented sewer and very active in her sewing room. And I've been active in mine too, but we'll see what I have to show for it. Okay, that's all. That's all for now. Thanks so much for watching. And if you're new, a new viewer, I hope you have found something of interest. I hope you'll come back to see what else is going on in my crafting and sewing and fiber arts kind of life over here. And if you are a returning viewer, thanks for stopping back by. Always fun to spend time with you, if I can characterize it that way. Many blessings to you, friends.